Hello there, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Samantha and this is my channel where I talk all about books. Anyway, today I'm coming to you with one of my end of the year / beginning of the year videos. I basically just didn't get around to filming these at the end of December, so here we are, beginning of January, and I'm trying to get them done. And I already explained this in like a previous one, but in case you missed it so far, I should have posted my stats video and also my goals video, so I'll link both those up in the card in case you're interested in checking them out. But today we're going to be doing the most controversial video. Disclaimer before we even get into it, if we have different opinions about a book, that's okay. And any books that I mentioned on this list, it's not a personal attack of the author, it's just my opinion. But we're gonna be talking about the worst books of 2022 for me personally. Again, if you have a different opinion, that's okay. We're allowed to dislike and like different things. Now that that's cleared up, I'm going to be talking about my top 5 worst books and my top 5 most disappointing books of the year, because I feel like these are definitely different categories. Like I had some disappointing reads and I had some ones which I just like straight up did not like, and like the disappointing ones are more like I just thought I was gonna love it and then I didn't. Anyway, so I thought we should start off with the biggest disappointments and then we will get into the juicy stuff, the worst ones. My first biggest disappointment was 1984 by George Orwell. I started this book in September and I ended up not finishing it. I decided to DNF it, which if you don't know stands for did not finish. I decided to DNF it in November because I was just trying so hard to get through it and I just couldn't. It was really not my thing at all. I just found this book to be so incredibly boring, and I feel like George Orwell was trying to make a point and then he made his point and then just kept on hammering on about it for the last like 200 pages, although I never finished it, so who knows how it ended up, but it was so boring. I hated the characters, especially like the main female character. I thought that she was bizarre and the way that she was written was just awful, and Winston, the main character, also awful. But this one was so disappointing because I really enjoyed Animal Farm and I was like so surprised by it because I don't read a lot of classics. So when I went into Animal Farm, I was thinking like this is probably not going to be like the book for me, but then I ended up like really enjoying it. I just thought, okay, well, George Orwell must be just like one of the classic authors for me. And then I you know, started reading 1984 thinking that that was going to be amazing because, you know, it's one of his, if not his most famous one, and truly just could not read it. I even had the audiobook and I just couldn't get through it, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stop wasting my time and I'm gonna just stop reading it. The next one on my list is another one that I decided not to finish because again, I thought I was gonna love it, and then I started reading it and I was just like, this is just not working for me. And that book was Everything I Need I Get From You. I forgot what the rest of it's called. I think it's like How Fangirls Created the Internet as We Know It. It's by an author called Caitlin Tiffany, and this was a 2022 release. It's a nonfiction book and it's obviously supposed to be about like how fangirls created the internet as we know it. And I was so excited about it because basically for me with nonfiction, I know that I love nonfiction about linguistics. Like that's my jam. That's probably my favorite genre of nonfiction is like linguistics. There are certain other ones that I enjoy and like I'm still trying to figure out what my genres of nonfiction are that I enjoy. But I did think that, you know, this random niche book about fangirls I thought could potentially be a new favorite or something, you know? I thought it would be an interesting case study, and it was just about One Direction basically, and I was so bored reading it. I felt like the author just wasn't getting to the point at all, and I just felt like I wasn't getting anything out of it. So in the end I stopped reading it about 25% of the way through because I just couldn't do it. I was so bored. The next one is another DNF. Whoops, I did DNF 6 books this year, so another one for you. And that was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. That was actually my first DNF of the year, and it was like the first book that I started reading in 2022. The reason why this one is such a big disappointment to me is because I had hyped this book up in my mind so much because I bought it at the end of 2019. I just fell in love with the cover and I thought the book sounded so interesting and mysterious, and I thought this was gonna be one that I loved, and then I just never picked it up for the longest time. Finally picked it up after having it for 3 years, and I just thought it was so bad. It was so boring to me, and I didn't like the writing style, which is very weird because I know that Erin Morgenstern's writing style is like something that most people praise, but I just could not get into it for the life of me. I thought it was trying to be too mysterious and then it just wasn't getting to the point fast enough for me, and like I don't know, I know that that's probably quite silly, and maybe if I revisited it without the idea of like, oh, I have to like get books done quickly, then maybe I could push through it, but I just didn't like it. I also read some reviews on Goodreads at the time, some negative reviews, and a lot of the things that people were saying were issues that I was having with the book at that point. So I just thought like, if those issues never get resolved, what is the point of me reading this, you know? My next most disappointing book was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. Again, this was a book that I hyped up a lot in my mind. This book was super popular in 2020 or 2021. I can't remember when it was released, but whenever it was released, everyone was raving about it like it was the best book they've ever read. And so I was obviously really excited about it, and people are still raving about it because the sequel came out like not that long ago. So yeah, people are still raving about this book, and I found it to be so freaking boring. Oh my god, I thought it was so boring. I thought the characters were so annoying, and it was also like really predictable. And I just thought like the concept was it like a new idea, and that, you know, props to Tracy Deonn, great idea. I just didn't like it, and that's okay. We're allowed to disagree. But yeah, I gave this one like 2 stars. Like, I didn't hate it, but I just didn't really like it very much. It was such a shame. And then my most disappointing book was a book that I actually rated like 3 stars, I think. So it's not even a low rating, but again, this is one that I just thought that I was gonna love, and I was so sad about the fact that I didn't. And that book was The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. This book basically follows the daughters of like the main characters in like famous gothic classics, like for example like Frankenstein and Jekyll and Hyde and some other ones which I can't remember. Anyway, it's set in Victorian London, and it follows like I think 4 or 5 girls who are just, you know, solving mysteries, and they also happen to be the daughters of these famous literary characters. So it's a little bit like spooky. What's really cool about this book, and was something that I thought I would like adore, and I actually really liked this part of the book, was that it's supposed to be like narrated by one of the characters, but sometimes throughout the story the other characters will interject. It'll be like Catherine interjects whatever, like, oh, that's not actually how it happened, and all this. And I really loved that part, and I actually really enjoyed like the first, I think 60% of this book. I was having such a fun time with it, and then the last 40% I was so bored out of my mind. And so I was so mad because like not only had I hyped it up in my head a bit that I was gonna love it, but then I was enjoying it for such a long time, and then the end of it, I was so mad. That one was definitely my biggest disappointment of the year. Now it's time to talk about the truly juicy stuff, my worst books of the year. So I have 4 books to talk about for my worst books of the year. I was gonna talk about 5, but one of them I feel like isn't fair. It wasn't the book for me, but it's not actually the book's fault. Whereas other ones, I feel like it is the book's fault, you know? I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So I have 4 books to talk about, and we're gonna start off with another book that I didn't finish, but I hated it so much that I could not possibly go on, and that was An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, not John Green. I'm so used to saying John Green, you know? Again, this was one that I hyped up in my mind for a really long time, and I'd heard people talking about it kind of recently and raving about it, and so I was like, okay, I'll pick it up, because also I would love to read more sci-fi, so I decided to pick it up. And I hated this book so much. I thought it was so bad. The main character, April May is her name, which first of all, fucking annoying. Second of all, the most annoying character, the most self-centered. Like, I just don't understand, because part of the storyline is that she becomes this like famous influencer YouTuber person, and I don't get how, because she had the worst personality I've ever read in a character. I think she was supposed to be unlikable, but like it was next level, and I hated her so much. And I thought the writing was very immature, like the sense of humor was immature, and it was just boring as well. And yeah, but my main issue was with April May. She was so freaking annoying. Like I hated her. So yeah, that's one of my worst books of the year. The next one was one called Small Town Big Magic by Hazel Beck. And this one, again, this one was disappointing, but also I just feel like it was so bad. It basically takes place in a small town, and our main character doesn't know about like witches or anything like that. She's just going about her business. She owns a bookstore, and then one day she finds out that she's actually a witch because she's attacked, and all her friends are witches as well, but for whatever reason her mind has been wiped of the fact that she's a witch. And yeah, it's about her learning to use her powers and stuff. This book had such a good premise, like, and the beginning of it was great because I had like the Gilmore Girls vibes from the small town, and then the main character wanted to be like a councilwoman, so that gave me like Parks and Rec vibes, and so that combination was great. I was really enjoying it when the book started off, and then the book continued, and I just hated the main character again. I thought she was just like so childish in many ways. It was just really bad. Like, I felt like the magic was not very good. I also thought this one was boring. I think that's a common theme. Like, some books just they're just boring. I'm sorry, but it's true. Anyway, and this was one of them, unfortunately. The next book on my list is The Anti-Relationship Year by Katie Wismer. This was Katie's second book. She's an indie author and also a YouTuber. I've been following her channel for a really long time, and I love her poetry. Her poetry is fantastic, in my opinion. Her books, however, I haven't loved her novels. I didn't mind her first one. Her first one was okay. This one I did not like at all, personally. It's basically a friends to lovers new adult romance set in college with two timelines. The first timeline follows our main character in her first year of uni, and the second timeline is her senior year. Sorry, I'm mixing English and American all together here. Like English system and American system, my terminology, but you know what I mean. Freshman year, senior year, first year, last year of college. And so yeah, it follows our main character Joanna during those times, and basically her first year of uni started off really badly, and then that's affected like the whole rest of the time, but throughout she's had this one constant of her best friend Miller. Then there's like friends to lovers, and I just thought that it was just done really weirdly. Like, I feel like the conflict, some of the conflict was like made a lot of sense, but I think other characters' reactions to it, I don't know, maybe it would be like that, but to me it seemed like it was just not, it just didn't make the most sense that that would be the conflict. I don't want to say what it is because it's a spoiler, but yeah, I just felt like characters' reactions were not great. And then in the final timeline, that's kind of where the romance develops, and I just didn't buy it, basically. I just thought the chemistry wasn't there, and overall it just wasn't for me. I just thought it wasn't very good. Moving on to my worst book of the year. I read this book very early on. I think I read it in February. I had really high expectations for it, and I honestly hate that book so much. And that book is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. Awful book, truly terrible. I think I gave it 2 stars originally. I've lowered it to like 1.5. I don't know why I'm giving it the 0.5, but yeah, it was so bad. It's basically like described as like a Schitt's Creek inspired story where the main character is a really rich heiress, and she's basically cut off after an incident and sent to go live in this small fishing town where her dad lived before he died. And yeah, so her stepfather sends her there, and she meets this guy who's like very grumpy, and it's like Grumpy Sunshine, and yeah, he's like this fisherman and all this. And first of all, chemistry between them, where was it? Non-existent. Second of all, the sex scenes, oh my god, they were written so, like, they made me cringe so much. I could not believe it. It was like, I just hated it. And there was dirty talk, and there was overuse of the word baby. Like, I already don't really like that as a term of endearment. Like, I don't like to be called baby. I don't like to call my fiance baby. Like, it's just not a thing that I do personally. No offense to you if that's your thing, that's fine. And once they started using baby as a pet name, it just never stopped, and it was all the time. And yeah, the sex scenes were so cringy, and I hated it. I hated it so much, and the more I think about it, the angrier I get. So we're gonna stop thinking about it. I do want to give the sequel a chance because I've heard that, you know, a lot of people who have issues with the first book actually really like the second book, so I'm tempted, but at the same time I'm like, I don't know. Is it worth my time? Probably not. But anyway, those were my 9 most disappointing and worst books of the year. Please let me know what your worst books were down below. I would love to know. And if you love some of the books I talked about, I'm really sorry. But as I said, we're allowed to have different opinions, and feel free to tell me about why you love that book. And maybe you'll point something out that I didn't notice and make me, you know, maybe not change my opinion, but see a new perspective. And, you know, I'm gonna film my best books right after this, so when I post that video, you can come on and tell me if you hate some of my favorites, and that's okay. We're allowed to have different opinions, but those are mine. So yeah, let me know your worst books down below. I'd love to know. If you have a video, feel free to link it and I'll check it out. But that is all I have for this video, so I hope you liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe down below, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!